So tell us what you've been eating for the last 4 years for the average person. No. Whose risk or hazard? Mine? No. Are we done? Yes. Stop reading now.
Hello guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be looking at a study with Professor Bart Kay, prospective study. Apparently we can get colorectal cancer from diets which consume meat and various other different things. Yeah, so this is what the study is that we're looking at today. And it's from the International Journal of Epidemiology. Basically, we're going to go through it and just dissect it bit by bit. There's obviously a short form version of the study, I guess, which we'll look through. But then, of course, we can look through the long form format as we progress through as well. What are your immediate thoughts looking at this as someone that understands statistics and data?
Right. So the first thing is that all of these kind of prospective cohort studies, what they are doing is they are selecting a subpopulation of people who meet their inclusion criteria in their sample. Or if it's a meta-analysis of such studies, then it will have studies that are selected on the basis of a number of factors, including who were the people, what was the subpopulation involved. What they then do with these people is they follow them for a period of time, 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, whatever it is, under absolutely no control or scientific discipline of any kind. They just watch and see what happens and write down when anyone in their sample set gets diagnosed with colorectal cancer, in this case, I assume, and how many years of observation it was before that point in time, so that we can make what's called a Cox survival rate comparison between a population within that subpopulation and another population within that subpopulation who differ in respect of the thing they want to point the finger of blame at. In this case, it sounds like it's going to be red meat. That's original. We haven't heard that one before. And then what they do is they do some statistical skullduggery, and they do a thing called adjusting. In other words, fabricating an observation that was not made is what they're doing, ostensibly. And if we need to explain why I'm stating that as strongly as I am and why I'm poo-pooing statistical adjustment, I'm happy to do that. But that's what they are doing. They are fabricating a data set, and then they are then reporting a fabricated outcome statistic, which they're calling risk. Despite the fact that risk is a cause and effect statement requiring a mechanistic cause and effect relationship between the so-called causative factor and the so-called outcome factor, which has been established. Hasn't been, because you'll find that ethics committees don't tend to like studies involving subjecting human beings to risk of any kind of disease process, actually. So they say, no, you can't do that study. Ergo, these studies are all based on associations which do not meet the criteria as being cause and effect data. The output that they're reporting anyway is a fabricated metric, a construct, this thing they're calling risk. The whole thing's laughable. Before I even read the paper, I'm already laughing at it going, there's no way this paper can establish cause and effect, risk, hazard, or anything remotely similar. It does not have the power to do that. It does not have the equipment to do that. In the same way that Lame Norton lacks the equipment to come and debate me, this study lacks the equipment to assert anything about cause and effect, period. And then we can look at the actual statistics and laugh our heads off even more, most likely. But that's my initial, straight away I read that paper, the title of that paper, I see that it's a prospective cohort study, and I'm already laughing.
Yes. So assuming you're someone that wasn't trained in statistical analysis and understanding data, what would be the first thing you look at then? What would someone do in your position? So you're reading this, you think, prospective study, colorectal cancer, hazard ratio, things like that. What does all this mean to someone? I mean, is there a shortcut to work out this study is a load of pants?
Well, there is. And you look for a study that uses the word risk, hazard, cause, or effect that also claims to be a prospective cohort study. That's all you need. It's pants. Because cause and effect, ergo risk and hazard, both must be full of veracity and correct and scientifically robust. There must be an established mechanistic relationship between those two factors, cause and effect, for which you will need an experiment to prove that cause and effect relationship exists. Ergo, it says risk, it says hazard, it says cause, it says effect, and it says I'm a prospective cohort study. You can put it down again and laugh and go, no, you're not. You're an adjusted, fabricated construct outcome variable study talking about a thing that you have not got the equipment to talk about. That's it.
I see. So here it's talking about cases of colorectal cancer and reported red and processed meat comparisons between different groups of people, and they kind of scale it up and say, oh, this is going to cause cancer. Here's the risk. Are there other pieces of data which completely conflict this?
Often when you look at the actual data set collected by the authors of such studies before adjustments are applied, you will find that things are quite different in terms of what was actually observed in the population with respect to what they are reporting. Example of that is the Adventist Health Study number 2, which reports a steadily increasing risk of death from all causes and all the subcauses as well as meat consumption goes up in their population of however many 100,000 Seventh-day Adventists that they followed over however long. And then you look at the raw data set and see that the exact opposite is what they actually observed in the populations before they decided to adjust them for all sorts of factors conveniently. Interesting. But let's just take this as a non-adjusted data set. Let's just say the adjustments that they made were very, very minimal. They were quite conservative and they haven't really turned the data set 180 degrees on its head like the Adventist study did, for example. Fine. Let's say that's what they've done just for fun. What are the magnitude of these outcome statistics that are being talked about here? Because they'll always talk in a relative sense. They'll talk about relative risk, 30% more risk, 50% more risk, 100% more risk, 200% more risk, whatever.
Yeah.
But 200% more than what? What was the baseline incidence? Well, that's what they're giving us here. We have to look at this, during an average of 5.7 years of follow-up, but we need to go up to the next paragraph above that to put that into a context. Okay? So, no, the one that says methods there, right. So, the one where it's moving too quick. There we go. Right. Okay. So here's the first point. They did a food frequency questionnaire as their measurement of the eating of naughty stuff.
Yeah.
Okay. So this study, if it wasn't already completely invalid as any kind of gauge on cause, effect, risk, or hazard, that there also is enough for you to go, Jonathan, what did you have for lunch Thursday 4 weeks ago, please?
Well, I had 400 milliliters of raw milk and 100 grams of whey protein. But I've been eating the same thing for about 2 months.
Right. Most people, if I ask that question to, what are they going to say? I haven't got a fucking clue. I don't know.
Yeah. For sure, yeah. I mean, people can be way off.
Out every 4 years usually as well during a study. So tell us what you've been eating for the last 4 years for the average person. No. All right. Anyway, how many people were there? 475,581 individuals on the study. Fantastic. All right. All right. So if you take 475,000, let me get my calculator here, 475,581, and we multiply that by the number of years of follow-up, which was 5.7 there, we said, that gives us a number which is called our number of person years of follow-up.
Mm-hmm.
How many people have we followed for how many years? How many person years have we followed people for? The answer is 2,710,811.7 person years of follow-up is what we have here. Okay, so that's quite a significant number. Now, I'm going to put that number into the memory bank of my computer here by pressing M+. Isn't that clever? Now let's clear.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's take the number of total cases. Total reported cases. If you scroll down just a little bit for me, Jonathan. There it is there. Okay. 2,609 diagnoses of colorectal cancer occurred during those person years of follow-up. So let's take that 2,609 and let's divide that by the memory return, that 2,710,811.7, and that gives us an incidence rate baseline of 9.62 times 10 to the negative 4 per person per year of follow-up. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
So that is a very, very small baseline incidence per person per year of follow-up. So if we then go back to the change in risk that they're talking about, let's say it was a perfect cause and effect relationship. Let's say it was mechanistically robust, although it's not. Let's say that all the homework's been done on that and they're actually right in this regard. Fine. What is the magnitude of this change here? Right. So participants who reported consuming an average of 76 grams a day of red and processed meat, because that's the same thing, of course. There's no distinction between red meat and that which is processed red meat, of course, compared with 21 grams a day. So that'll be probably, first and fourth quartile numbers or whatever, had a 20% higher risk of colorectal cancer, with a 95% confidence interval around that statistic of somewhere between 4 and 37%. So let's be conservative and take their upper bound of 37%. So if we take 9.624 times 10 to the minus 4, and we divide that by, 0.27, I'm sorry, by 0.3, what is it, 35% did we say? 37%.
Yeah.
The actual difference is now in the 10 to the minus 5 per person per year of follow-up. So if we multiply that out over 100 person years of follow-up, i.e. a 100-year lifespan from this point, at whatever age these participants started being followed, you will find that there is no meaningful clinical or utility in any difference between anybody spread across the range of red and processed meat intake there, not over 100 years. This study is not worth the paper it would be printed on if we'd bothered to print it out. At least then we might have had something to wipe our backsides with. Good thing we've still got toilet paper. But if you're looking for science to underpin any claims about cancer or any hard health outcome in human beings whatsoever, the last thing you need to look at probably is a prospective cohort study, unless that cohort study clearly disclaims itself as a piece of pilot work fit only to inform on hypotheses for further actual science to be done if that should ever become allowable in some way. And it should probably have a massive, massive difference. Like, for example, something like cigarette smoking and lung cancer, which has an incidence difference per pack year of smoking of something like 11,500% or something like that. relative increase, or the incidence of ALS, a universally fatal neurodegenerative disease, the one that killed Professor Hawking eventually. The incidence of ALS in statin-taking populations versus non-statin-taking populations, for example, that's another one that's quite impressive. That one is up to 16,700%. So more of a change relative-wise on a small incidence thing than smoking and lung cancer. But if you don't have numbers like that, if you have we have a maybe as high as 37% change, well, you've got nothing. You've got absolute junk. You've got rubbish. You've got something that real scientists can laugh at. I hope that kind of clarifies the whole thing, really.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I can see a lot of people reading this and being bamboozled by, participants, 475,000. And people probably think, I know you alluded to it, but people probably think, there's so many people, the chances are that something in it must be right. I mean, what can they draw from this, if anything? Can they just draw from, there's not really any real hypothesis that can be drawn, so they actually have to do a proper study?
Well, if you did a study like this and you found a massive, huge, enormous change that you just can't possibly ignore, like 11,500% or 16,700% or something like that, you might go, wow, there's a big change there. We need to investigate. We need to look into that. We need to find out what's going on there. Probably. But if you've got a 37% change maximum on an incidence rate that's already the fourth order of magnitude, down, you've got nothing. It's not worth anybody's time. This is the purpose of this piece of work, is to act as a publication for its authors, for something to write on their CV, for prestige, in order for them to feel like they've justified themselves as an academic. And it's an excuse for the journal concerned to publish some so-called science that everyone can read and be so impressed by. This is anything but actual utility in the real universe for any real given living human being. For a start, in here, we would need to read the paper more carefully to find out even who these people were, because any prospective cohort study only applies to the population from which it's drawn. So let's have a look at who were these 400 and something thousand people.
Mixed age men and women.
There we go. So they are a group of men and women aged between 40 and 69 years of age at the time that this data collection started. So now you've only got up to probably add 50 years usable lifespan in those people. So that even halves the efficacy of this outcome statistic there. Good. Also, most people, I was going to say everyone, but it's not true. Most people identify as being one or other gender, don't they?
That's right. Yeah, most people.
So this is a population which is mixed and we don't know what it is. So this isn't a population that represents me. I am a man. I identify as a man. I have a thing that men have.
Mm-hmm. Thing on the front. Yeah.
My parents had Jewish beliefs and I can prove it.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, if somebody wants to tell me about my risk of any outcome in my health over any period of time, they're going to need to show me a study which represents me.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense.
And that would be a group of men about my age who've had the life experiences and exposures that I've had, who are my phenotypic and genotypic as close as possibles. Forget it. This is just absolute gut-rotten nonsense. There's nothing of value in this paper at all. Sorry, Jonathan, go on.
No, do you think the data capture in this is quite... Do you think there's limitations? So they said here there's a touchscreen questionnaire. And I know if I do a touchscreen questionnaire, I just press the same sort of button over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
Just hope that it goes through quicker. I mean, how validity do you think there is? Because no one's to sit there answering 100 questions.
No, look, food frequency questionnaires invalidate the study on the spot.
Mm.
A lot of people say, "Oh, we have this validation study on our questionnaire." Well, not good enough, and nonsense, because you can manufacture a validation study to show whatever you want, pretty much. The fact that it's a touchscreen thing, even worse. I agree with you. The fact that they're not asked to record everything that goes in their mouth means that there is absolutely no way that we can correlate what people genuinely have eaten over any period of follow-up with their outcomes in any way. And even if they did, have they controlled every other confounding covariate, collinearity, all the interactions statistically there, every degree of freedom existing in the universe? Have they locked these people in laboratories and controlled this situation? No, this is not an experiment. It cannot inform on cause and effect, period. So we always do circle back to that, I know, but that's the thing to keep in mind. If you are ever in doubt, you pick up one of these prospective cohort studies and you start reading for some reason, remind yourself, this is not capable of informing on cause, effect, risk, or hazard. And even if it was, whose risk or hazard? Mine? No. Are we done? Yes. Stop reading now. Probably. That's the advice I'd give you, because you're wasting your time reading this nonsense. This is not science.
Sure. Yeah, I just highlighted something here. It says, participants who selected do not know or prefer not to answer the question used to define the main exposure of interest. How is not having an answer? How do you tally that up? If loads of people don't give an answer, surely it just limits the data set itself.
Yes.
It seems a bit daft.
Yeah.
Yes, I mean, the next thing I wanted to look at was the conclusions. I mean, is it fair to say that a conclusion is just an opinion?
Yes, absolutely. The conclusion of any study is the part of a scientific write-up where authors are invited to give an interpretation of the data set they have reported. Unfortunately, many peer reviewers do not hold these authors accountable in respect of, is their conclusion statement supported by the kind of study they have done? Does it have the equipment? Okay. So, I mean, if a study talks about cause and effect, then it is an experiment, period. This is not an experiment. Ergo, any conclusions that it makes about cause, effect, risk, or hazard are invalid conclusions, because this paper cannot inform on that, not one jot. So let's read it. In conclusion, the systematic analysis of a contemporary cohort of 500,000 men and women from the UK population, we found that consumption of red and processed meat, no, you didn't, because you didn't track consumption. You tracked what people told you they were consuming. So there you go. Straight away, not even the first sentence. This conclusion is invalid and false. All right. Processed meat and alcohol. Oh, well, if they get colorectal cancer, was it the meat or the processed meat or the alcohol or the combination of all three, or perhaps two out of those three? Which? Oh,
that's right, yeah.
With an increased risk? No, because it can't inform on risk of colorectal cancer. Okay. We also found that fiber from bread, particularly from bread for some reason, magic fiber, clearly, and breakfast cereals was associated with a reduced risk. Funding. This work was supported by Girdler's New Zealand Health Research Council Fellowship, Cancer Research Number bloody, 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 blah, and the Wellcome Trust bloody, bloody, blah, Our Planet, Our Health Project, Livestock Environment and People, blah. The funders did not influence the design of the study, analysis, or interpretation of the data, the writing of this report, or the decision to publish. So then we'd have to look at all of those organizations and see whether they receive any money from anyone who sells bread or fiber-related things. I think you'll probably find they do, because this study cannot support that claim either, basically. The current recommendation by the UK Government Department of Health is that people should not eat more than 90 grams of red and processed meat a day. Well, who cares what the recommendation is? Participants in the highest category of red and processed meat consumption were consuming an average of 76 grams of red and processed meat per day. No, that's what they were reporting. See how that's different still? Thus, this group was on average meeting the current recommendation, but still had a 20% increase in risk. No, they didn't, because this can't inform on risk of colorectal cancer. Because you see, the thing is, if you take two subpopulations of people aged between 40 and 69, and you look at them by way of, okay, retrospectively, who did and who did not end up with colorectal cancer, you'll find quite a few things might be shared. Covariates. Maybe the people that ate more fiber did that because they were told to eat more fiber by the health authorities. Maybe these people were health conscious people that did other things in their life that actually genuinely were helpful, and that swamped this result. It's called healthy user bias. So maybe that's what happened. Therefore, our results suggest that reductions in meat intake below the current recommendation may further reduce the risk of colorectal cancer. Yeah, and maybe not too. Number one, because may always leaves the other one, maybe not too, on the table, 100% on the table, and this doesn't actually give us any reason to believe which way we would go. And this study still can't inform on risk at all, not one jot. So no, that conclusion is not supported by the data collected by these authors in this study, not one jot.
For sure, yeah. There's a study going around, I think there's one or two studies about deferring fibre intakes and people with Crohn's, and they find that their symptoms are put into remission when they get to 0 grams. And it's almost like that was quite a controlled study compared to this. Well, how are they getting such differing results with their conclusions, you know?
Well, it's because healthy user bias, probably.
Yeah.
Just imagine that these people, all of them, were absolutely accurate with their dietary recall, food frequency questionnaires, which they weren't, so forget it. But let's just say they were for fun. The people that tend to eat more red and processed meat and drink more alcohol are the people less likely to do other healthy physical activities as well.
Sure.
Now, which of those things caused the outcome colorectal cancer-wise, or didn't cause it? And if so, how would you tease those things out and tell me which had what amount of causality? In a mixed outcome, an inextricably interwoven rich tapestry of a person's experience of the universe. I mean, the whole idea is fundamentally, totally, utterly vacuous, nonsensical, ridiculous, and laughable. This whole area of prospective cohort studies, people need to understand this isn't at the peak of some hierarchy of academic goodness of studies or whatever. Evidence, what do they call it? The evidence pyramid? This kind of nonsense is dead set at the bottom just about. This is hypothesis generating pilot work. And in the case of colorectal cancer and anything people report to have been eating over 5.7 years, the study tells us there's nothing further to investigate or worth investigating any further, because the differences are so small as makes no odds to anyone over a 50-year lifespan beyond this point.
Yeah, I'd like to discuss a little bit about anecdotes. And obviously, we're two people that follow the carnivore diet. And people might listen to this and think, okay, well, I don't know about meat now. I'm not too sure if it does or doesn't do anything. What is the value of like an N equals 1? At this point, we've both interviewed lots of people that have been on a carnivore diet with seemingly no conflict of interest. They're just people that happen to watch videos and feel better for following a diet. How much utility does that have? Because at this point, we're probably looking at millions of people that follow this diet, and they put seemingly almost all health issues into remission.
Well, the only difference between a large collection of anecdotes and a data set is the discipline under which the anecdotes are collected. Yes, you're quite right in that our now hundreds of thousands and probably millions of people that follow this dietary pattern now, we have a big voice. We have a strong voice. We have a kind of anecdotes that all point in the same direction, that all tell us that this is good and positive and people react well, and increases all sorts of aspects of health for those people, or seems to be associated with that, should we say. There are very few people reporting any kind of problem at all, and those that are reporting problems are generally people who have made the mistake of changing their diet too suddenly, and therefore need to do some restorative work to make their guts work again. The value in that, for me, is just as much as the value of anything that's been offered up in the so-called ring-fenced area of really ideology, theology, and propaganda known as the human nutrition science. All this prospective cohort stuff. It's all nonsense. None of it is science. Science is performed in a laboratory, experiments with confounding factors controlled in order to talk about cause and effect, risk or hazard. It's not my fault that that's what science is. That's what it is.
Sure, yeah. Yeah. What would you say to someone that is perhaps skeptical about this way of eating? Perhaps they've looked at this study and they think, okay, well, maybe it doesn't really say what I thought it did initially. Now, the idea that we're just going to eat meat and fat and things like that. I mean, some people are saying like, oh, we're all a bit different. We're all a bit different. Like, does that hold any truth, or is that just a bit of a con?
Well, we are all a bit different in that our genetic structure, person to person, is slightly different. Yes, in that one of us will have blue eyes, one of us will have brown eyes, one of us will have green eyes, blonde hair, red hair, sky blue, pink, whatever. But clearly, patently, obviously, you look at a human being and you go, that is a member of my species, that is human, that is Homo sapiens sapiens. We have the same structures, we have the same organ systems, we have the same biological pathways, nutritive pathways, all of that kind of stuff. The entire range for people in terms of most aspects of their behavior versus health outcomes is very, very slim. I mean, you don't think about, if I say to you, what is the appropriate diet for a dog? You don't say, oh, well, all dogs are a bit different. Well, what's the ideal diet for a horse? Well, all horses are a bit different. Hey, come on. No. Yeah. You say a dog's a carnivore, an obligate hypercarnivore. A human is an obligate hypercarnivore as well.
Yeah, I know we've obviously looked at the N15 isotope data, and that it's kind of saying we ate about 80% plus ruminant meat by, caloric or macronutrient value. My kind of question is that the optimal diet? And obviously we found that some populations were eating tubers and things like that, the fibrous stuff. Is it true that perhaps we ate some things historically which maybe weren't optimal, but they allowed us to survive?
Well, I think the rooty tubers would be an example of that. That'd be a subsistence feed in the case where the mammoth hunt was unsuccessful for whatever reason, or, hard times of, let's dig up some roots and boil those up for 12 hours until they're loose enough that we can even chew them for half an hour and stuff, and maybe get some short-chain fatty acids out of their fermentation in the hindgut such that it remains in a human. But that was 20%. Or 20% or less, sort of thing. Sure. As you say, the 80% was the flesh and associated fat of mostly large ruminant animals. So is that the ideal diet? Well, if you understand how evolution works, i.e. positive and negative selection pressures mold the genes that survive and are passed on, then the obvious and inescapable conclusion is that, yes, that is the ideal diet for a human, because the human physiology has tuned itself and idealized itself for that diet, because that's what we did eat, no question. So I have no question in my mind that it's the appropriate diet. And when I eat that diet, I do better, vastly better than when I eat even 90%, 95% of that diet.
Yeah.
There's a vast reduction in my goodness of function when I transgress even a little. So this is another anecdote. That's my anecdote. It doesn't have to be anybody else's, because we're all a bit different, aren't we, Jonathan?
Just a little bit. Yeah. Some of us tall, some short, some bits in the front. Some people have inside bits.
Some quite hairy and yellow.
Yeah. Definitely. Is that your uniform?
Well, this is the little apron that he got from the ladies at Carnivore Revolution a while back. They made it special for him. He was quite chuffed. I can't get it off him. I can't get him out of it. I can't do a thing with him. Basically, he's his own bear. Burr. Yeah.
Brilliant.
There it is.
Yeah, I think you covered that one really well. We've been through a whole study. It, like you said, there's nothing really to see once you read past the fact it's a prospective cohort study. Obviously, we looked at the optimal human diet for us human people. Yeah, it's quite interesting. I mean, I have the same kind of experience yourself. I can tolerate a few things here and there, like a bit of seasoning on my food, but then beyond a certain point, I do get some gut microbiome disruption, which will impact everything: my digestion, my sleep, my performance in the gym. I did a fruit experiment like a year ago or something. I did fruit for like 3 days just to see what happened. I knew what was going to happen. I had it in overnight and I felt like crap, honestly. It had no benefit to my training performance at all. Actually, my body fat measurements went up within 3 days with a equalized, matched caloric intake, which is absurd because it doesn't make sense when you go with common thinking anyway. Very good. Well, thanks very much for your time, Bart. Cheers. I'll link all your show stuff in the show notes below. Your channel, your affiliate links and all associated things.
Lovely. Good.
Cheers.
All right, carry on.
Build muscle and lose fat on the carnivore diet.